Program, the place for common sense. Today is Wednesday, July 17, 2019. I am MD. In 60 seconds, I'll give you the world. Live from New York City at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on social issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. Welcome once again to the Fourth Branch program. If you've been here before, thank you for your participation. It makes the journey a little bit lighter, a tad more bearable. If you join us for the first time, once again, welcome to the Fourth Branch program. The Fourth Branch program is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to perfect the union. In order to do so, we must remove the biggest obstacle of all: ignorance. JFK said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. That's the importance of ridding our society of this plague, this disease, ignorance. Today we will conduct the reading of the Mueller report, and we will also touch on a very important topic: immigration. You may have received a note or notice or headline saying the effect Melania Trump, the immigrant. And we will begin the conversation about immigration by taking a look at the individuals, well, her parents as well, who at some point immigrated to the United States of America. That's in light of this uproar that Donald Trump created with the way that immigration is being handled, and with the latest tweet that is sent out a couple of days ago. So we will use that as our background in order to talk about, in order to understand only whether Donald Trump himself is confused. But since we've been postponing for a couple of days the reading of the Mueller report before we tackle the issue of immigration, we will jump right in with the reading of the Mueller report. Well, announcement, of course. Thanks for being here. It is said that the country has been divided. This is not a new term, this is not a new debate, this is not a new discussion. It is, we've heard many times, been debated more than we care or can imagine. We found out that this big it's a conversation we had before in this very program, is not between Democrats and Republicans. Of course, it sounds like it is. It looks like it is. And we always blame the fact that nothing can be done in Washington with gridlock, meaning Democrats are fighting Republican and vice versa, so nothing can be done. That's the politician. Now, everything is interrelated, of course, but we have found out that the big divide in America is not so much between Democrats and Republicans. It is between those who want and seek the truth. They want to know what's right, what's right, and those who choose to stay and live in ignorance. Yes, you heard correctly. There are people who could not care less about facts, who could not care less about the truth. They choose to live in ignorance. And as I mentioned here before, if the ignorance of an individual or a group would not have had any impact in my life, in the lives of future generation, I couldn't care less. If my neighbor next door is an individual, that may not impact me, so I would not care less. However, unfortunately, in our society, there is no such thing as someone's action does not impact others. And we can give you example of such, some of which are catastrophic, not just for the nation, for the even. So that's the reason here at the Fourth Branch, we decided to put everything on the line in order to fight the greatest, the biggest plague our society has to confront. Ignorance. Ignorance has nothing to do with education. Because if that were to be the case, the United States of America would have only intelligent, smart people. Unfortunately, that's not the way it is. I remember my mother used to say, and growing up, I used to frown at hearing her say that education doesn't make anyone smart. Well, school education, that is. And I thought, huh? And realize now that I've been looking at the state of affairs in the United States of America, where you have very smart people from a school perspective, people who have gotten their master degree, even PhD, and you're listening to those people and you think, what the heck? And those people can easily be put in the category of ignorant. So it's not education that we're talking about when we say that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. So of course it sounds as if we're talking about people who did not get an education. Ironically, you would find that some people who may not have had the opportunity to go to college actually are much smarter than those who actually spend their time in school, and terrestrialize the danger in our country. Now, this is related a great deal to the Mueller report we're about to read, because ignorance destroys. There is no good thing about ignorance. Whether you choose to stay ignorant or you're ignorant. Now, I ought to add that we were all born ignorant. Yes, you heard correctly. No one was born a genius. I mean, you heard the expression before, so and so was born a genius. No one was. Now, the genius in question that people tend to say so and so was born a genius has to do with the individual ability to grasp very complex issue pretty quickly, just by looking at it, by thinking about it, sometimes pretty almost on the spot, while the rest of us will go and try to dissect the problem, but the genius in question can easily figure it out. But that genius that we're talking about had to learn like everybody else. So if the idea, when they say genius, they tend to think it's someone who was born knowing. No such thing. But that aside, besides that, the legislators, both Democrats and Republicans, but we already know and talk about it, overwhelmingly Republican, did not even bother to read the Mueller report. Now, those are called leaders whose job is to guide the followers, the constituent, so that they can be better educated. Here there are those individuals who took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Those individuals decide to completely ignore the report, which provide insight into what a foreign government had done to the United States of America. The country doesn't have just a Donald Trump. The country has a Republican problem. But the problem is complex because, you see, constituent of their leaders. They follow the path, they follow what their leaders do and say. Now, imagine what that means. You have a bunch of ignorant leaders leading those people. What do you get? We'll talk about that in a bit when we approach the issue, when we discuss of immigration. But keep in mind that the country is divided, and the reason today we're talking about Democrats and Republicans, especially when it comes to the constituent, is because I mentioned before, Democrat legislators, you may not agree with their policies, with their legislation, but at least they tell you exactly what they have in mind. Your Republican legislators lie. Donald Trump is not the first one, and he's not the only one. Before Donald Trump even conceive in his mind the idea of bidding for the presidency, your Republican legislators have been lying to you. As we mentioned to you before in this program, we have been looking at data as far back as 100 years on that the overwhelming truth that that's the way it has always been with the Republicans legislators. And we gave you example here before, of course, a conversation about educating, hopefully eradicating ignorance, because that's the whole point of this program. We're not interested in whether you become Democrat or you become Republican. We're interested in unrooting ignorance from the equation. Now, you choose to be Democrat, you choose to be Republican, that's your business. Now, you may construe in your mind most ways with Republicans, if you don't hear anything flattery, anything positive, it's always a damn liberal. For the record, we neither a damn liberal nor a Republican. But we clearly see that the Republican Party has been doing a lot of damage to our nation, and a lot of damage has been pretty much helping shredding the Constitution of the United States while claiming to be patriots. So let's take a look at the next section in the Robert Mueller report. Now, it is a reminder, today is July 17, was the date that Robert Mueller was supposed to be on Capitol Hill to talk about the Mueller report. But there was some negotiation, according to the report, between Democrat chair and Robert Mueller team to delay this testimony by 1 week, which means on July 24th, next Wednesday, Mueller will be on Capitol Hill. That's, of course, assuming it's not delayed again. And as we mentioned before, as soon as Mueller steps foot on Capitol Hill, we will be reading of the report, whether we complete it. Well, if we do not complete it, we will stop the reading, because as we already determined, if Mueller cannot clear the issue, cannot talk in plain language for everyone to understand, there is no amount of reading that can do that. So we will continue this process until Tuesday, on Wednesday, which is the time that Mueller will step foot on Capitol Hill. Now, assuming this is not delayed, that's the plan. Now, if it's delayed again, of course, if we're not done, we will continue with the reading. Now, after the election, Trump continues to deny any contact or connection with Russia, or that Russia aided his election. On November 8, 2016, Trump was elected president. 2 days later, Russian officials told the press that the Russian government had maintained contact with Trump's immediate entourage during the campaign. In response, Hope Hicks, who had been the Trump campaign spokesperson, said, quote, "We are not aware of any campaign representative that were in touch with any foreign entities before yesterday. Trump spoke with many world leaders," end of quote. Hicks gave an additional statement denying any contact between the campaign and Russia. Quote, "It never happened. There was no between the campaign and any foreign entity during the campaign," end of quote. On December 10, 2016, the press reported that U.S. intelligence agency had, quote, "concluded that Russia interfered in last month's presidential election to boost Donald Trump's bid for the White House." Reacting to the story the next day, President-elect Trump stated, quote, "I think it's ridiculous. I think it's another excuse," end of quote. That no one really knew who was responsible for the hacking, suggesting that the intelligence community had, quote, "no idea if it's Russia or China or somebody. It could be somebody sitting in bed someplace," end of quote. The president-elect also said, that Democrats were putting out a story of Russian interference because they suffered one of the greatest defeats in the history of politics. On December 18, 2016, Podesta told the press that the election was, quote, "distorted by the Russian intervention," end of quote, and questioned whether an official had been, quote, "in touch with the Russian," end of quote. The same day, incoming Chief of Staff Reince Priebus appeared on Fox News Sunday and declined to say whether the president-elect accepted the intelligence community's determination that Russia intervened in the election. When asked about any contact or coordination between the campaign and Russia, Priebus said, quote, "Even this question is insane. Of course, interfere with Russian, and of course," end of quote. Priebus added that, quote, "this whole thing is a spin job," end of quote, and said, quote, "the real question is why the Democrats are doing everything they can to delegitimize the outcome of the election," end of quote. On December 29, 2016, the Obama administration announced that in response to Russian operation aimed at the U.S. election, it was imposing sanctions and other measures on several Russian individuals and entities. When first asked about the sanction, President-elect Trump said, "I think we ought to get on with our lives," end of quote. He then put out a statement that said, quote, "it's time for our country to move on to bigger and better things," end of quote. But indicated that he would meet intelligence community leaders the following week for a briefing on Russian interference. The briefing occurred on January 6, 2017. Following the briefing, the intelligence community released the version assessment, which concluded with high confidence that Russia had intervened in the election through a variety of means with the goal of harming Clinton's electability. The assessment further concluded with high confidence that Putin and the Russian government had developed a clear preference for Trump. Several days later, BuzzFeed published a verified allegation compiled by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele during the campaign about Trump's Russia connection under the headline, quote, "These reports allege Trump has deep ties to Russia," end of quote. In a press conference the next day, the president-elect called the release, quote, "an absolute disgrace," and said, quote, "I have no dealing with Russia. I have no that happening in Russia because we stayed away, so I have no deal. I have no loans, I have no dealing. We could make deals in Russia very easily if we wanted to. I just don't want to because I think it would be conflict." End of quote. Several advisors recall that the president-elect viewed stories about his Russian connection, the Russia investigation, and the investment of Russian interference as a threat to the legitimacy of his electoral victory. Higgs, for example, said that the president-elect viewed the intelligence community assessment as his Achilles heel because if Russia had no impact on the election, people would think Russia helped him win, taking away from what he had accomplished. Sean Spicer, the first White House communication director, recalled that the president thought the Russia story was to undermine the legitimacy of his election. Gates said the president viewed the Russia investigation as an attack on the legitimacy of his win. And Priebus recalled that when the intelligence assessment the president-elect was concerned, people would question the legitimacy of his win. At the bottom of your screen, you read that Sleazy Dawn, the Donald Trump the country should have known about. Now we put that, but we're well aware that those who voted Donald Trump in office were aware of who Donald Trump is. They know that Donald Trump is a scammer, a crook, a criminal, a scoundrel, a liar. They all voted for him, all the while claiming to be Christian, claiming to be evangelicals, claiming to be, well, have family values. The president's conduct concerning the investigation of Michael Flynn. During the presidential transition, incoming National Security Advisor Flynn had two phone calls with the Russian ambassador to the United States about the Russian response to the U.S. sanction imposed because of Russia's election. After the press reported on Flynn's contact with the Russian ambassador, Flynn lied to incoming administration officials by saying he had not discussed sanctions on the calls. The official publicly revealed in press interviews. The FBI, which previously was investigating Flynn for other matters, interviewed him about the calls in the first week after the inauguration, and Flynn told similar lies to the FBI. On January 26, 2017, Department of Justice official notified the White House that Flynn and the Russian ambassador had discussed sanctions and that Flynn had been interviewed by the FBI. The next night, had a private dinner with FBI Director James Comey in which he asked for Comey's loyalty. On February 13, 2017, the president asked Flynn to resign. The following day, the president had a one-on-one conversation with Comey in which he said, quote, "I hope you can see a way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go." National Security Advisor Flynn discusses sanctions on Russia with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Shortly after the election, President-elect Trump announced he would appoint Michael Flynn as his security advisor. For the next 2 months, Flynn played an active role on the Presidential Transition Team (PTT), coordinating policy position and communicating with foreign people, including Russian Ambassador to the United States Sergei Kislyak. On December 29, 2016, as noted in Volume 2, Section 2.A.4 Supra, the Obama administration announced that it was imposing sanctions and other measures on several Russian entities. That day, multiple members of the PTT exchanged email about the sanction and the impact they would have on the incoming administration. And Flynn informed members of the PTT that he would be speaking to the later in the day. On January 6, 2017, as noted in Volume 2, Section 2.A.4 Supra, intelligence officials briefed President-elect Trump and the incoming administration on the intelligence community assessment that Russia had interfered in the 2016 presidential election. When the briefing concluded, Comey privately to brief him on unverified, personally sensitive allegation compiled by Steele. According to a memorandum Comey drafted immediately after the president began the meeting by telling Comey he had conducted himself honorably over the prior year and had a great reputation. The president-elect stated that he thought highly of Comey for working with him and hoped that he planned to stay on as FBI director. Comey responded that he intended to continue serving in that role. Comey then briefed the president-elect on the in the Steele reporting. Comey recalled that the president-elect seemed defensive, so Comey decided to assure him that the FBI was not investigating him personally. Comey recalled he did not want the president-elect to think of the conversation as, quote, J. Edgar Hoover. On January 10, 2017, the media reported that Comey had briefed the president-elect on the Steele reporting, and BuzzFeed News published information compiled by Steele online stating that the information included, quote, specific, unverified, and potentially unverified allegation of contact between Trump aides and Russian operative, end of quote. The next day, the president-elect to intelligence community leaders about the fact that the information had leaked and asked whether they could make public statement refuting the allegation in the Steele reports. In the following weeks, the congressional investigation to examine Russia's interference in the election and whether the Trump campaign had colluded with Russia. On January 13, 2017, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence announced that it would conduct a bipartisan inquiry into Russian interference in the election, including any, quote, link between Russia and individuals associated with political campaign. On January 25, 2017, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, HPSCI, announced that he had been conducting an investigation into interference and possible coordination with the political campaign. And on February 2nd, 2017, the Senate Judiciary Committee announced that it too would investigate Russian efforts to in the election. Flynn makes false statement about his communication with Kislyak to incoming administration officials, media, and the FBI. On January 12, 2017, a Washington Post columnist reported that Flynn and Kislyak communicated on the day the Obama administration announced the Russia sanction. The column questioned whether Flynn had said something to, quote, undercut the U.S. sanction, end of quote, and whether Flynn's communication had violated the letter or spirit of the Logan Act. President-elect Trump called Priebus after the story was published and expressed anger about it. Priebus recalled that the president-elect asked, quote, what the hell is this all about? Priebus called Flynn and told him that the president-elect was angry about the reporting on Flynn's conversation with Kislyak. Flynn recalled that he felt a lot of pressure because Priebus had spoken to the boss and Flynn needed to, quote, kill the story, end of quote. Flynn directed McFarlane to call the Washington Post columnist and inform him that no discussion of sanction had occurred. McFarlane recalled that Flynn said words to the effect of, quote, I want to kill the story, end of quote. McFarlane made the call as Flynn had requested, although she knew she was providing information, and the Washington Post updated the column to reflect that, quote, a Trump official, end of quote, had denied that Flynn and Kislyak discussed sanction. When Priebus and other questioned Flynn internally about the Washington Post column, Flynn maintained that he had not discussed sanction with Kislyak. Flynn repeated that claims to Vice President-elect Michael Pence to incoming Press Secretary Sean Spicer. In subsequent media interviews in mid-January, Pence, Priebus, and Spicer denied and Kislyak had discussed sanction, basing those denials on their conversation with Flynn. The public statement of incoming administration officials denying that Flynn and Kislyak had discussed sanction allowed DOJ officials who were aware that the statements were not true. Those officials were concerned that Flynn had lied to his colleagues, who in turn had unwittingly misled the American public, creating a compromised situation for Flynn because the Department of Justice assessed that the Russian government could prove Flynn lied. The FBI investigative team also believes this call with Kislyak and subsequent denial about discussing sanction raised potential Logan Act issues and were relevant to the FBI broader Russia investigation. On 20th, 2017, President Trump was inaugurated and Flynn was sworn in as National Security Advisor. On January 23, 2017, Spicer delivered his first briefing, spoken with Flynn the night before, who confirmed that the calls with Kislyak were about topics unrelated to sanctions. Spicer's statement added to the Department of Justice that Russia had leverage over Flynn's based on his lies and could use that derogatory information to compromise him. On January 24, 2017, Flynn was interviewed by agents from the FBI. During the interview, which took place at the White House, Flynn falsely stated that he did not ask Kislyak to refrain from escalating the situation in response to the sanction on Russia imposed by the Obama administration. Flynn also falsely stated that he did not remember a follow-up conversation in which Kislyak stated that Russia had chosen to moderate its response to those sanctions as a result of Flynn's request. It is worth noting that while Flynn was lying to the FBI, now it's one thing to lie to the public, not that it's okay, but as you see, Donald Trump made a norm to lie to the American people. And it so happened that his supporters, the Republican legislature, they're all okay with it. Now, picture that the president, his biggest accomplishment is to lie to the American people. His greatest asset is to lie to the American people. But that's only half of it. But look at the other half of the story, that the Republican legislators, all of them, and the Republican constituent, all of them are okay with the President of the United States being a liar, a criminal, and now, well, a criminal. Now picture that. Picture that party with all its members, both in Washington, legislators, representatives, who always claim to be patriots. All its members always claim to be defenders of the nation. All its members always to uphold the Constitution of the United States. For instance, whenever the debate about gun rights come, they always up in arms defending the Constitution, because the Constitution gave us a bare arm. Yes, they love the Constitution as long as it benefits them personally. So this is not something just with the Republican legislators. The Republican constituent, they too, they claim to be patriot. They claim to be evangelical. They claim to be conservative. They claim to be, well, they claim a lot of things. Except that they are not any of those things. They evangelical. They okay with a guy who's married 3 times, divorced 3 times. They okay with a guy who's lynched. You would not want your children to grow up having that kind of language, and yet they okay with the President of the United States being that person. They have values, but they okay with a scoundrel in the White House saying anything that comes to his mouth. They defending him. That's the way he is. It's okay for the President of the United States to be a crook. It's okay for the President of the United States to be a liar. It's okay for the President of the United States to be a criminal. It's okay. Because the Republican legislators and the Republican constituent say it's okay. And those are the same people. Because when when you watch those same individuals making noise because Bill Clinton had an affair with an intern, and they think, oh my God, this is the end of the world. How could the president stand? How could the president soil the Oval Office? How could the president of the United States behave in that manner? How could that be? Yes, evangelicals were up in arms. Gee, we have this guy. That's not acceptable. Yes, that's the Republicans who claim to be Christian, who claim to be evangelical, to have family values. Yes, those people, we recall very clearly. We have the tape we showed you before here of Lindsey Graham making a case to impeach Bill Clinton because, well, the president of the United States acted in a manner that's undignified to the Oval Office. Recall that? Don't you? Yes, it was the end of the world. And yet today you have people like Jerry Fowler, who has thousands of people following him, who line up with Donald Trump. Evangelical. And that's the irony of the whole thing. He has thousands and thousands of people who are following him, and he's leading straight, and they're okay with that. This is the Republican Party. You have the legislators who were up in arms because Bill Clinton had an affair with an intern, but today they have a criminal. Bill Clinton was not a criminal. It was a personal affair. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it was okay, because a president's supposed to live a life that's a model life, a life that dignifies, so that we can point to an individual to follow as a role model. So I'm not making any excuse for Bill Clinton. I'm just showing you those same Republicans who claim to have family values, Republicans who claim to be Christian, those same Republicans who claim to be evangelical, those same people who wanted to execute Bill Clinton for doing something wrong in the Oval Office, for not honoring the United States, that those same people today, they're okay with a criminal sitting in the Oval Office. Someone whose language you don't want your children to hear that individual talk. The way that he referred to women's body, about women, the kind of deal that he made, scam that he concocted, is a bona fide criminal. His co-conspirator is currently sitting in jail for things that both of them did together. And the reason Donald Trump is not part of it is because the Department of Justice, DOJ, had principal guidelines that prevent the sitting president from being indicted. That's the only reason. And yet you have Christian defending him. Oh, I don't care. That's the way he is. You don't care that the president of the United States, the person who is the face of the country on the world stage, to be a criminal, a crook, a liar, a scumbag, a sleazebag? You don't care? And you were making so much fuss about Bill Clinton having an affair? If you are, you cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. If you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain to all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. A couple of days ago, Trump sent the country into a tailspin. He made some disparaging comments about 4 congresswomen. And the gist of which I talked about it yesterday, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing again. So if you want the detail of that conversation, I refer you to the video made today about that very topic, which is the tweet that Mr. Trump, the sleazy Don rather, sent out. And the gist of the tweet, Trump bashed those 4 congresswomen. They all happen to be of immigrant descent. Not all. And he suggested that those 4 women to go back to their countries. And he, of course, talked about the country being bad, being poor. Sleazy Don's way. The Democrat legislature issued a resolution that condemned the president as a racist, as if we need a resolution to tell us that. The president of the United States is a bona fide racist. No one can have an argument about that. And yet, Republican legislators have been dancing around not to say that. The irony of Trump telling those women to go back to their country is the following. 3 of those women were born right here in the United States of America. The other one had been a citizen for almost forever, naturalized, became a citizen. So in other words, whenever there is a conversation, whenever Sleazy Don, whenever I say Sleazy Don, I'm referring to Donald Trump. Whenever Sleazy Don wants to pick a bone with member of a minority group, he always goes as far as he can. Now, for those people who are defending Trump and saying the tweet was not racist, Trump himself agreed the tweet were racist, but he said, I don't care because the agree with me. You see the dilemma? The Republican Party as a whole is a haven for racists and is a haven of racists. I already said that, and I wrote about it. In fact, I've been writing about that very topic since 2013 now. Now, here's an excerpt of one of the articles I published in August of 2017. That's right after the Charlottesville march by the white supremacists. It's an excerpt you can find on when you go to the peoplebranch.org website. If you go to the peoplebranch.org, interested in that particular topic, racism, you can search for that for those words, racism, racist, or you can simply browse the web, or you can simply browse the site for important articles that are published there. Now, and one of such articles is entitled "Hatred is Not Right." And the other relevant article to this conversation is "The Republican Party is a haven for racists." Yes, most Republicans, and emphasis on most, are racist and harbor deep feeling of prejudice. I published that article. A lot of Republicans, especially those who believe they're not racist, those who are on the fringe, those who are subtle racists, who are prejudiced, discriminate, but they're not openly racist. We're not talking about white supremacists here. We're not talking about KKK. We're talking about, in general, most Republicans are racist. Now, it sounds like a condemnation of a whole political party, and it is. You can go as far as you go, but I will go as far as Ronald Reagan becoming president of the United States. He used racism as his platform, as a way to prop him up. He hooked him up with the welfare queen, welfare queen. He told the story over and over, and actually the story was believed to be true. Now, I talk about that here in other contexts. We can revisit that later in some other program. So the Republican Party, Republicans in general, have always relied on racism to prop them up. Even in 2012, you saw Rick Santorum using racist undertone rather, to prop his campaign. And it's something that's done over and over and over, and it never died. Donald Trump, when he this that escalator, I believe it was in June 2015, if I'm not mistaken, in June, July, around that time, to make his announcement for the presidency of the United States, he did exactly what all of Republicans have always done. He used racism to prop him up. The end result is right in front of us. So yes, you can argue that most Republicans are not racist. Now, I said Republicans are racist. Yes, you find exception. You have a few, but most Republicans are racist. You want proof? Donald Trump is sitting in the Oval Office. It's not some Republicans who voted him in office. It's more Republicans voted Donald Trump in office. And today, it's not some Republicans who are defending him. It's not some Republicans who are protecting him. It's not some Republicans who are lying for him. Most Republicans. So yes, when I say most Republicans, I mean most Republicans. The Republican Party is a heaven of racists, a heaven for racists. Now, a lot of people try to avoid saying those things because it's not politically correct. But here in this program, we already acknowledge that unless the problem is identified and acknowledged, it can't be corrected. So we cannot be mincing words and dancing around words around issue, because call the devil by its name. Yes, most Republicans are racist. They have a deep feeling of hatred for minority in general, blacks in particular. That's a fact that's proven over and over and over, and we have it today again. Most Republicans are racist. You see it in their legislation, you see it in their policies, you see it in the law, you see it on the street, the police officer, you see it at the workplace, you see it everywhere that you look. You may want to deny it, but you cannot escape it. So denying it doesn't do anything for anyone. In fact, it prevents a solution from being applied, from being suggested and implemented, because everybody is behind that. Oh, that's not really true. Maybe it's not all that bad. It is all that bad. We have the President of the United States who is openly racist and defended by every member of the Republican Party. What exactly do you want as proof that's the case? That I dance on my head? It's not going. Now, while Donald Trump, sleazy Don, is out there drumming the beat, immigrants not to come to the country, for immigrants to go back to their countries. In the meantime, we have those people. Do you know who they are? Of course not. But I'm about to tell you. Those two people you're currently looking at on the screen are Melania Trump parents. The man's name is Victor Naz. He's now 74 years old. The wife, another name is Amalia Naz. She's 72. You may not recall if you're not paying attention to this thing, but it wasn't too long ago. Probably, I would venture to say, sometime in, was it late 2018? It could have been late 2018 or sometime early 2019 that those two people became U.S. citizens. But their stories are not of that much interest to me, and personally, I don't have any problem with anyone becoming U.S. citizen, being here as an immigrant. We all in the United States of America as immigrants. The country belong to the Indian. At least we found them there. You may recall the history that when English came here, they pretty much took the land from those who owned the land. They killed some of them. Some of them died because of the they were put into. But everyone, including Donald Trump's father, or grandfather I should say, came from Germany. So when Donald Trump brought immigrant to go back home, I always try to understand whether he remembers where his wives and parents come from. They weren't born here in the United States. Melania Trump was not born in the United States. You know, the first lady, she was not born in the United States. Melania Trump was born Melania Noss, 26, 1970. I shared a birthday with her. I didn't even realize that. In any case, she was born on April 26, 1970. A little town called Novo Mesto. If that's the way it's pronounced, it's in the Yugoslav Republic of Slovenia. Now, here's the kicker. Donald Trump is gung-ho, telling immigrants they're not welcome here, telling immigrants to go home. Now, his wife came here in the United States in 1996, New York City to be exact. It was not until 2001 that she became a permanent resident, which means for 6 years she lived, for 5 years she lived in the United States as an illegal immigrant. Yes, you heard correctly. Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States, came to the United States in 1996. So when you hear Donald Trump making all this noise, and nobody seems to call him on this type of hypocrisy, it actually gets on my nerve. And the reason it gets on my nerve is because this is not something that we do not know. Melania Trump came in the United States in 1996. She spent 5 years in the country as an illegal immigrant. She did not become a resident not until 2001. In 2005, she married Donald Trump, and in 2006, she became a US citizen. So here is the hypocrisy of Donald Trump, of the Republican Party, who now do not want immigrants here, illegal immigrants, so to speak. Melania Trump spent 5 years in the United States as an illegal immigrant. I don't hear mention that. I don't hear Donald Trump trying to deport her. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not personally against people coming here trying to better their lives financially. I'm not for the idea of anybody come here illegally either. But the treatment of those individuals by Donald Trump leaves a lot to be desired from that same individual who, in a sense, you can say, encourage illegal immigrants in the United States. And now he's all gung-ho, he's against immigrants. See the irony? You have all those people who seem to be okay with everything bad that Sleazy Don does. Everything bad that Sleazy Don does is okay. Those people who have ethics, those people who have family values, those people who are evangelicals. Yes, they all okay with sins. That's fine. We're fine with it. And they would have the gall to be preaching about Christianity? Seriously? Preaching about family values? Seriously? Which family values are that? Tell me, and I'll tell you exactly who you are. You cannot claim to have family values. You cannot claim to be Christian. Life is around people who commit sins, who lives in sin, and pretty much don't care about anything close or near anything moral at all. So don't come and claim Christian conservative, because you are no Christian conservative. Don't call family values, because Republicans do not have any family values. Or at least maybe I take that back. Maybe what they construe as family values, they should describe it to the rest of us what they mean by family values. So when you talk about Christian and Christian conservative, maybe you should describe or define what you mean by that, because your actions, the support that you provide to that value clearly tells me you know Christian and no Christian conservative. Maybe you should redefine your terms. So he is that guy who is all gung-ho on his high horse telling people to go back home. Now his wife, the first lady, lived in the United States as an illegal immigrant for 5 years, 1996 to 2001. So he didn't think it was bad then, and all of a sudden he feel that it's bad. Yes, Melania Trump, First Lady of the United States, lived in the United States for 5 years as an illegal immigrant. Where were the Republicans asking for immigrants to go back home? Where were they? In 1998, Lindsey Graham stood on the floor, House floor, to make a case for Bill Clinton impeachment because he defiled the Oval Office. The presidency of the United States ought to be respected. The dignity of the office preserved. Today, Lindsey Graham is the same individual that defending the scoundrel, the crook, the criminal sitting in the Oval Office. How is that for a party with family values? Yes, there is a Republican Party, and it is a serious disease because it has already infected most everyone in the party. Republican legislators, Republican leaders, and constituents all have been infected. That's a plague in the country. No matter where you go, if someone identifies himself or herself, you don't have to wait to hear the defense on behalf of Donald Trump. You don't have to wait, because you already know that that individual is already infected. That's a disease in the Republican Party. It's racism. It's okay with the president defiling the presidency. It's okay for the president to be a crook. It's okay for the president to be a criminal. It's okay for the president to be a scoundrel. It's okay because the whole party has been infected. And the question is, who will emerge to save what's left of the Republican Party? Who will? If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged, because it's not being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, at that point, the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are a patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. If you cannot do that, don't talk to me, because you are no patriot. I hope this program was of some importance to you. Well, if not, you already know what to do. Send us your comments, suggestion, criticism. Let us know how we can make it better. If you have a particular topic you would like us to talk about here, let us know. We will research it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. In the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Hope you can join me at 10:30 a.m. Good day. That was an update through the conference. Join us again tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful afternoon. See you next time.